21, and she was in the hospital having me. 2 years ago, 2016, living in the middle of Pennsylvania in farm country in the bastion of the red state, she said, if no one will take me to the voting place, I will crawl there. And I swear to you, she was serious as a heart attack. And my little brother, 6'8" little brother, drove her there. This year, she's just gotten out of the hospital for a different heart ailment, and she's going to be staying at home. I come from this sort of mix of weirdly patriotic people. My mom was raised in Washington, D.C., and my dad's Canadian, my ex-husband's British, my brother married a Korean, but we're all very sort of patriotic. My grandfather especially, he was, mom's apple pie, baseball, and vote, you bet. One time I asked him, why don't, he and my grandmother traveled a lot, why haven't you gone to Europe? And he said, we live in the most amazing, beautiful, interesting country in the world. Why would I go anywhere else? And me being sort of another patriot, I also travel, but I travel internationally, and I've been very fortunate to teach for some governments, at the invitation of some governments, Turkey, China, and Bhutan, to name a few of them. I'm always very proud to represent the United States of America. Flag waver? Yes. Voter? No. So, when the first time I remember trying to vote, and I think this was the first time I voted, I walked with my infant child to the Housing Project Community Center that was in our neighborhood, and right after I cast my ballot, gunshots were fired. By the time I got home, our phone was ringing off the hook, literally on the wall, it was back then. The phone was ringing off the hook with my husband trying to find out if we were okay, because news of this shooting had traveled fast. 4 years later, my baby was then 4, and we studied all of the local newspapers, who to vote for, why it was important to vote, why Daddy couldn't vote because he was English, and we put on the same dresses, we dressed alike, and we veritably skipped to the church we had been assigned to. And we get there all ready to vote, and the grandes dames of the neighborhood, who had been in charge of these polling places for years, said, no. I said, what do you mean? They said, your name's not on the list. I said, what do you mean my name's not on the list? I'm a taxpayer, I'm a homeowner, I teach at the high school, I volunteer, I do a lot of community service. And they said, no, your name's not on the list, as they looked at a dot matrix green striped printout. I said, well, wait a minute. Can you look under my whole last name, Sims-Fletcher? Can you look at it under Sims? No. Can you look for it under Fletcher? No. Can you look under it for a different spelling, like S-I-M-M-S? No, we're sorry. You can't vote. I said, no, wait a minute. What still purpose, and what can I do? And they said, you can go to the Lancaster County Courthouse, plead your case, and see what they say. Lancaster County Courthouse in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, is about 20 miles from where I was. And, as so many other times, it was my 28th birthday, and we had plans, and the polling was closing in 2 hours anyway. And so Brittany and I left, both of us really confused and disappointed and practically near tears because we've been denied. The next election, I tried again. And again they said no. So I decided that I just wasn't going to vote. I didn't take my daughter or my son to any more voting places or any polling places. And when people would start fighting with me about, why don't you vote, being all passionate, all this, I said, wait a minute, I've made a choice. I've made a choice to vote with my actions. I was a really, really involved volunteer. You name it, I probably volunteered for it. High school foreign exchange, school bake sales, AIDS walks, rides, and dances. I did legalization of tattooing. I even did rock the vote. But I didn't vote. And again, when somebody would get all up in my grill and try and talk me into it, I was like, no, I am a disenfranchised voter. And I feel vindicated because I'm actually voting with my actions. Well, as the years went on, my sturdy stance on not voting started to shake a little bit as my daughter became an art school activist, including pepper spray in Quebec and things like that. And my state school poli-sci son enlisted. So in 2016, I decided I would try again. And I put on my red sequin top hat, I put on my white tuxedo tails and a navy blue dress because if I wasn't going to get to vote in the end, at least I could costume. And I walked the 8 blocks down to my polling place and I talked to the people in line, I talked to people inside, and I got in finally and I gave them my little card and they said, oh, you need to go over there to the other line. And I went over and they said, your name's not on our list. I said, of course it isn't. And they said, but you can fill out this ballot and they'll check you out. I'm still unsure as to whether my vote counted. They weren't sure. And I left. Not long ago, I read on Facebook, some friends of mine from Turkey were talking about how scared they were living in a country that is changing rapidly. Their former prime minister is now the president, and he is taking away some secular rights. This is a country that, even though the women had the right to vote in 1932, only had women's equality in 2004. And that meant up until that time, the father or the husband told you what to do, and you basically had to do it. And they vote because voting's important. A couple weeks ago, a lovely friend of mine from Bhutan posted a picture that was really scary to me. Her hand was red with what looked like blood, and she had a very concerned face on. And I went and I said, Tinsley, what is that all about? And for this small kingdom, Bhutan in the Himalayas, which only became a democracy in 2007, who has only about 60% of the heads of household who attended any formal education. This red, blood-looking thing on her hand was proof she had voted. And she looked so serious because it is important to her. Last week, an older friend of mine said, you know why I vote? I vote for the people who served, the people who risked everything, and some gave the ultimate sacrifice. And I vote because they did that so that I had rights. And one of those rights is the right to vote. So today, in Queens, the most ethnically diverse place on earth, in the rain, I walked the 8 blocks down to PS 35, and I walked in, and amidst all my neighbors from all of those different countries, and with many half a dozen ladies with their little girls in tow, for my mother who's homebound, for my daughter who is in student loan exile in Scotland for the past 10 years, and for my son who's an Afghanistan veteran, and for myself, and for you.